It seems like every single year we have to warn people, do not overdraft the quarterback position. And unfortunately, it seems to happen all the time. So are you looking at one of the top quarterbacks early? Or are you looking at a little bit value later on in your draft? Who's going to be the safest? Who's going to be the riskiest? Who's going to give you the most consistent performances? Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Today we're taking a look at the riskiest quarterback options from last season and how that could end up translating to 2024. And if you happen to miss it, my last video was on this same exact topic, but for running backs instead. So let me explain real quick what is risk score and how do we come up with it. So the quarterback position is going to be slightly different than running back or wide receiver because we're not looking at as many options. So for the quarterback position, we're looking at how many games a quarterback finished inside the top 6 at the position, how many times they finished inside the top 12, so number 7 through 12, and how many times they finished outside the top 12 at the position. For every time that you finish 1 through 6 at quarterback, you get 1 point. For every time you finish 7 through 12 at quarterback, you get 2 points. And for every time you finish lower than a QB 12, you get 4 points. We add up all the points at the end, we divide it by the number of games that player played in a season, and that is how we get our risk score. And the lower the score, the less risky that quarterback is. And there are going to be some names in this video that are going to catch you completely off guard. Watch until the very end. And before we get started, if you haven't purchased your 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Guide yet, you better do it right now because we are getting to release a ton of information that you are not going to want to miss out on. And the draft guide has been available to access since the NFL draft. We had tons of dynasty content in there along with rookie scouting reports. But now we're getting ready to release all of our player profiles, exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else, like my dynamic running back rating, plus tons of more content that you can use to dominate your fantasy leagues all season long. You're not going to want to go to your draft without our cheat sheets available to you as well. So make sure you use the link down in the description below. Head on over to the website, order yours right now, and you'll get instant access to it. And we continue to update it all the way until week 1 of the regular season. All right, first up in the video, we're going to be taking a look at the quarterbacks that had the most finishes inside the top 6 last season. Jalen Hurts leading the way with 10 top 6 performances at the quarterback position probably doesn't shock anyone last year. And then Josh Allen being right behind him at number 9 probably doesn't shock a lot of people either. But the difference between Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen to the next tier of players is a little substantial because Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott each had 6 top 6 performances last year. 4 less than Jalen Hurts and 3 less than Josh Allen. That's a pretty substantial difference there. But how about Justin Herbert? I don't think a lot of people realize he finished inside the top 6 quarterbacks 5 times last year. Anthony Richardson dealt with those injuries last year, only played in 4 games, but he did manage 1 top 6 performance, which was 1 more performance than what Deshaun Watson had in 2 less games. Deshaun Watson needs to pick it up, or this trade is going to go down as one of the worst ever, and it may already be in NFL history. But even a guy like Will Levis, who had 9 games last season, didn't crack the top 6 quarterbacks 1 time. But the more shocking bet may be the fact that CJ Stroud, he only had 2 top 6 performances last year. Patrick Mahomes only had 2 top 6 performances last year. That was the same amount of top 6 finishes as guys like Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith. All right, let's take a look at the most top 12 finishes. So this would be guys who finished anywhere between 7 and 12 at their position. And if I didn't mention it already, the players listed in this video are the top 21 quarterbacks in terms of their current ADP with rookies removed. Obviously, rookies don't have any information from last year, so we're not going to take a look at those numbers. So we're only taking a look at the returning players inside the top 21 ADP as of right now. Jordan Love and Tua finishing as a back half quarterback 1 last season 5 times. I don't think that catches anybody off guard. Both of those guys had fantastic seasons, but then Baker Mayfield also tied them with 5 and is really a testament to how good Baker Mayfield was last season. Baker Mayfield was a quarterback one 7 times last season, the same exact amount as Tua. It was also more quarterback one finishes than CJ Stroud or Patrick Mahomes. And it will be interesting to see what we get from Matthew Stafford this season. Last year, he played in 15 games, but he was only able to manage a quarterback one finish 4 different times. He was in the top 6 twice. He was in the top 12 twice. Obviously, Cooper Kupp was on and off the field, and if he stays fully healthy this season for the entire year, that will speak wonders to Matthew Stafford. And hopefully Stafford can also stay healthy as well. Kyren Williams missed some games last year, but at least he has Blake Corum backing him up now. Stafford, I would love to see some more quarterback one finishes from. If you're in like a 2 quarterback or super flex league, Matthew Stafford should really only be looked at as like your quarterback 2 option. Right now, I don't know if I'm really buying into a top 12 quarterback finish consistently for him, given how deep the position is this year. All right, now we're going to take a look at the quarterbacks that finished outside the top 12 the most last year. Matthew Stafford, we were just talking about him. He had 11 finishes outside the top 12 quarterbacks, which was the same as Geno Smith last season. Those numbers are not good enough. We need Matthew Stafford to have a much bigger year this year. And it absolutely could end up happening. But we're also relying on the health of Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Kyren Williams to allow him to finish higher than that. And honestly, I don't know if I'm buying into Geno Smith this year. I feel like Sam Howell could end up taking that job if Geno Smith doesn't get back to some of those numbers that he was putting up back in 2022 when he was comeback player of the year. Patrick Mahomes is being drafted as a top 4 quarterback right now. Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence, who tied with him for the most finishes outside the top 12 last season, are barely being spoken about. But I get it. Patrick Mahomes is probably due for a much bigger season. And if he were to finish outside the top 12 10 times next year, something went dramatically wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's also crazy to see Jared Goff finish outside the top 12 that often. Jared Goff, his risk score is not going to be great because clearly in this situation here, where if a quarterback finishes outside the top 12, they're going to get dinged right away. And we don't split it up as much as we do with the running backs and wide receivers. Running backs, wide receivers, we always look at the top 12, the top 24, and the top 36, and then outside the top 36. At the quarterback position, we're really just looking at inside the top 12 and out of it. Now, the reason for that is because a majority of leagues out there still today play in 1 QB leagues. So really in those situations, 10 or 12 team leagues, we really want to take a shot at the guys that we feel like could finish inside the top 12 the most often. Now, if you play in a 2 quarterback or a super flex league, obviously things are going to be a little bit different for you because you're going to be looking at guys probably all the way down into the top 24. And that's why I keep the ADP around 21 quarterbacks. And then again, this doesn't include the rookies. So there's 3 rookies right now being drafted inside the top 24 quarterbacks. So we'll continue to eye those things and how some of the ADP may adjust over the coming months. But for right now, we want to take a look at the guys who are the riskiest options based on how often they finish inside the top 12. And when we talk about the final scores, we can adjust a little bit to see whether or not they fit into our game plan for those bigger quarterback leagues. Jalen Hurts only 2 finishes outside the top 12 quarterbacks last season. I've been banging this drum almost all offseason long. Jalen Hurts should be going in front of Josh Allen. And in today's video, I want to give away a free draft guide, and this is what I want. I want your argument down in the comments below. Why or why not should we be drafting Josh Allen over Jalen Hurts or the other way around? Let me know down in the comments your argument for or against Jalen Hurts, who you think should be drafted first, and why. If this video gets 500 likes, I'll pick somebody that gives one of the best arguments down in the comments to get a draft guide for free. All right, let's go ahead and talk about our final risk score for all of these players and a little bit of a breakdown on everybody as well. And we start with the lowest score. The lower the score, the less risky you are And Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen led the way last season. And I already mentioned, let me know down in the comments the argument between those two, because it'd be super interesting to hear whose side you're on. But then Justin Herbert, I was not expecting Justin Herbert to not only be in the A tier of the less risky quarterbacks, but to be third overall. Last season was not a bad year for him. And I think it's just a testament to how good he could end up being if he has a competent coaching staff around him calling plays. This year could be a little bit different. He lost his top targets from last season, a little bit of a different offensive philosophy. To me, when I take a look at Justin Herbert, I don't look at him as a high upside quarterback this season. I think seeing these numbers today can help us understand that, hey, Justin Herbert may not be a top 12 pick, but for those of us in 2 quarterbacks or super flex leagues, Justin Herbert could end up being a really, really good option that's just being overlooked too often. Jordan Love finishing at number 4 in the A tier of least risky quarterbacks. And when I take a look at Jordan Love, I'm hoping that he can continue to expand on his game in 2024. I've said it in some other videos. Right now, Green Bay is like the who's who of offensive weapons. Outside of Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs, there's not really that name that jumps off the table to anybody. They're all kind of under the radar. So how many of them will step up and how consistent can they be? Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and Kirk Cousins all tied with a 2.5 risk score. And again, these guys listed in yellow are not bad. They're the B tier. These are all top 12 quarterback options. Maybe there's been a little bit more fluctuation in where they land, whether it be QB1, low-end QB1, or outside the top 12. But we know with these guys, we're going to get a consistent amount of quarterback 1 performances with a few other on the outside looking in sometimes as well. Brock Purdy falls into the same boat. A guy that we may not look at and say, hey, he's a top 6 option every single week, but a lot of times he's going to be in that top 12 and maybe flirting just on the outside of it as well. Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson, both of these guys played in a limited amount of games last season, and we don't have a whole lot to work on with them, but for the numbers that they did put up, they find themselves right here at the end of the B tier. And for both of these guys, fully healthy seasons in 2024 could lead to top 12 potential fairly easy. All right, the C tier, and I'll tell you right now, you're looking at the C tier thinking to yourself, how is CJ Stroud listed there? Well, CJ Stroud at the beginning of the year wasn't nearly as dynamic as he was towards the end of the season because that offensive line was in really bad shape. But also from a football standpoint, yeah, CJ Stroud was playing very well at times. But there were also some games where he had like some decent yardage but didn't score touchdowns, or he threw a couple of touchdowns, but they ran the ball a little bit more often. From an NFL numbers standpoint, he looked great for a majority of the season. From a fantasy football standpoint, there were some outcomes that were just a little bit less to be desired, and that's why he finished a little bit lower. A guy like Tua, I really feel, is going to continue to be in this type of area. They're going to have some really, really big games, but we've also seen with the Miami Dolphins that sometimes their offense just doesn't get it going in any certain week. And when that happens, Tua and everybody else struggles, and Tua ends up falling outside the top 12, and that could continue to happen this year. Baker Mayfield, we talked about how many times he finished as a QB1, and he finished outside of it basically the same amount of times. So you know with Baker Mayfield, hey, you're getting some top 12 performances, but you're also going to get some performances right outside the top 12. Again, he's kind of that perfect quarterback too for those of you playing in deeper leagues. Joe Burrow is going to be all about his health, and really the same thing with Deshaun Watson as well. Joe Burrow, we'll see how he comes back from that wrist injury. Definitely not a wrist injury. We see that often in quarterbacks. Does it end up affecting his strength and his grip on the football? That remains to be seen. If he's healthy, he should easily finish at least in the B tier this season, as long as that offense around him stays healthy as well. And then you take a look at a guy like Deshaun Watson. Like, I don't really know what's going on with Deshaun Watson, to be honest to you. He was extremely good when he was with Houston, and then he had all of these off the field issues that happened, and then he was traded to Cleveland, and he just hasn't been able to live up to the hype since then. He needs to stay on the field first and foremost. If he's got enough weapons around him that we should see a decrease in how risky he is this season. But how healthy is he going to be, and can he be more consistent while on the field as well and stop making so many mistakes? All right, the first 2 names in the bottom tier probably catch a lot of people off guard. Jared Goff Goff and Patrick Mahomes. And really, it's because each of these guys finished outside the top 12 quarterbacks 10 times last season. It's really hard to visualize that with how good both of these guys were inside their own offenses. But for Jared Goff, it really comes down to the fact that the Lions just run the football a lot. And because of that, there are some games where Jared Goff may have a good game, but unfortunately, it's just not a great game because they ran the ball and were so effective on the ground. This year, though, they play all but 3 of their games in domes. That's great for Jared Goff. Patrick Mahomes last season really was the victim of having an offense that just didn't stretch the field as well as they would like. A lot of the weapons they were counting on to step up, Kadarius Toney, just didn't do it, and because of that, they lacked some of that big playmaking ability. Travis Kelce was also hurt to begin the year. Now that they've added Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, oh man, Patrick Mahomes should be in for a much bigger year and will probably be in green next season. Trevor Lawrence, he has some upgraded weapons as well in Jacksonville now. And because of that, hopefully he finds himself as a much safer option this season. But there's one thing that we've seen from Trevor Lawrence since he entered the league. He's going to have those games where he just throws picks and he can't get away from them. Matthew Stafford, a lot of it is going to rely on the guys around him. Cooper Kupp needs to stay healthy. Kyren Williams needs to stay healthy. More importantly, Matthew Stafford needs to stay healthy as well. Will Levis, only 9 games last season. He's expected to be the starter this year, though, and he has a lot of guys around him that can help him reach higher levels than what we saw for him last year. We know he can throw the deep ball, and the stats tell us he can throw the deep ball. It's going to be his accuracy over the middle and in the intermediate routes that needs to take a big step forward for him to take a big step forward. And Geno Smith being at the end of this list only solidifies the fact that I believe Sam Howell could potentially take over at some point in 2024. Nothing against Geno. He had a great season in 2022, but he took a big step back last year and he was far too inconsistent at times. He needs to be more consistent, not only for people drafting him in fantasy, but obviously his own team and that offense, because that offense is going to want to stay balanced. They're going to want to run the football. And if Geno Smith just can't take care of the football through the air, people will bite on the run just a little bit too often. Well, there you have it, headliners. Taking a look at the riskiest quarterbacks from last season. I already gave you something to comment with down below to get a free draft guide. If you missed that, maybe you should have watched the entire video. For now, though, I'm going to call it quits on this one, and I'm going to get out of here to keep working on draft guide stuff because that thing's about ready to be an absolute banger. If you appreciate the content, hit the like button. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button, and everybody should turn on the bell notification so whenever we drop new content, you'll get notifications about it right away. But for now, Headliner Nation, peace out, stay safe, stay healthy. YouTube's recommending an old video of ours. Make sure you check it out right now. It's probably my running back risk video that I just did. You won't want to miss that one. I'm going to get out of here. Headliner Nation, have a great one, and I'll see you on the next episode.